بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين. We ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to grant us all the sincere intentions. So, continuing with these lessons, remember we have two parts. First we speak about the chapter of belief, and in the second half of the lesson we speak about some of the sins of the different body parts. So in speaking about the belief and the protection of one's belief, we reached up to speaking about the second category of kufr, which is the kufr actions. Last week, if you remember, I also mentioned the difference, or rather the explanation of the word apostasy, ridda in Arabic. This is when a person who was a Muslim falls out of Islam. He's known as, of course, a kafir, a non-Muslim, but specifically he is given this title, he's put in a category known as or he's put under a category of ridda, of being an apostate. So the second category are the apostate actions, the kufr actions, things that a person might do because of which they fall out of Islam. So firstly, to prostrate to an idol. This is something that only a non-Muslim does. So if there was a Muslim who prostrated to an idol, then this person would become a non-Muslim. This counts as a kufr action. Likewise, if a person was to prostrate to a table, intending by the prostration that they are prostrating to the table, they're doing sajda to the table, or the bottle, or the stage, or the curtains, or the chair, if they intended by their sajda that it was towards these objects, it was for these objects, then this is considered to be kufr. That person would leave al-Islam. We're not talking about if a person was praying in a certain direction and they put a chair in the way so as to prevent people from crossing between them, between the chair, or so that they're not praying and there's just an open space. Yeah, if someone puts a chair in the way and they prostrate towards the chair, then this, we're not talking about that. That's not sinful. It's sunnah to put something in the way. If a person was praying and in front of them there is a wall, or in front of them there is a tree, but they're not intending the tree, they're not intending the wall, they're facing the qibla, then this is fine, of course. What we're talking about is if a person intends something that is in front of them by their prostration, something like a bag, something like a stand, something like a pole, something like a lamppost. If they intend by it, if they intend that the sajda is for it, then this is kufr. The only exception here is the exception of doing sajda to a human being. This is haram. To do a sajda to a human being when one wants to show respect to that human being, or one wants to salute that human being, then this is something that is haram. As for if somebody prostrated, did sajda to a human being because they intended to worship that human being, then this is worshipping other than Allah, and whoever worships other than Allah is a non-Muslim. So when it comes to prostrating to other than Allah, when it comes to, like I said, something that's not a human, like a bottle, like a lamppost, like a tree, here we don't ask questions. If someone says that they are prostrating to that item, not to Allah, then we don't ask questions. We immediately would say that this is kufr. This is kufr. You need to embrace al-Islam. However, if somebody prostrated to a human being and said, no, I didn't do it out of worshipping, I'm not worshipping the human being, I'm respecting the human being. I really like this person, so I'm respecting them, and I'm showing my respect by prostrating to them, then this is haram. This is not kufr, but again, it's not allowed. One of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ once came to him, and he had come from Ash-Sham, the land of Ash-Sham. This is Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiyallahu anhu. And as soon as he saw the Prophet ﷺ, he prostrated to him. He did sajda to the Prophet ﷺ. So he was reprimanded. The Prophet said to him, Ma hadha ya Mu'adh? What is this? Meaning, don't do that. Why are you doing that? So he said, well, the people in Ash-Sham, the Christians in Ash-Sham, they prostrate to their priests. And you are higher in status than those priests. Those priests are non-Muslims. You have a high status, so you are more deserving of this status, and for me to show you this high status. So that's why I prostrated. So the Prophet ﷺ said, no, don't do that. Okay? This shows that it's not kufr to prostrate to a human being out of respect, but still it is haram. It's not permissible. Some ignorant people, they prostrate to their sheikhs. They prostrate to their religious teachers. They prostrate to people who they think are spiritual leaders. They prostrate to them, wal-'iyadhu billah, out of respect, and this is sinful. So this is among the apostate actions. Likewise, if someone was to do sajda to the sun, or sajda to the moon, then this is kufr. In the past, it was permissible for Muslims to salute each other, to show respect to each other by prostrating. The brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam prostrated to him out of respect. The angels were ordered to prostrate to Adam alayhi salam. So prostrating, just that by itself, it's not necessarily kufr. Prostrating to a human being, it's not necessarily kufr. It is kufr if a person intends worship. Another example of a kufr action is for somebody to throw the book of the Quran in the bin, or a page from the Quran in the bin, or a religious book, an Islamic book, in the bin. If they did that on purpose, because this is an action that only a non-Muslim commits. This is something only a non-Muslim does. And throwing the Quran, the book of the Quran, in the bin, this inherently is belittling. This is belittling the Quran. Likewise, to step on the book of the Quran, this is kufr. And in all these examples, of course, this is if somebody did it deliberately. If somebody accidentally stepped on the book of the Quran, then this is of course not kufr. Likewise, if they accidentally threw the book of the Quran in the bin, they thought they were carrying something else. They were carrying two things. They wanted to put one of them in the bin and the other on the shelf, and they got it the wrong way around. What they wanted to throw in the bin, they put it on the shelf, and what they wanted to put on the shelf, they threw it in the bin, and it happened to be the Quran. This is not kufr. A person will take the Quran out and clean it, wipe it. So these are some of the kufr actions that the scholars mention. And there are many, many kufr actions. But the kufr actions, they contain either belittling something in Islam, and they can contain belying the religion of Islam. For example, for a person to do the cross sign, to start at the top with their fingers, to go down towards the chest and then left and right, to make that cross sign, this is something that only non-Muslims do. And for that reason, if a person was a Muslim and they did that, then they would become a kafir. And like this is the case for any action, anything that only non-Muslims do, that is specific to non-Muslims. If a Muslim does it, then he would become a kafir. If a person had been a Muslim and they did it, then they would fall into kufr. Then you have the third category, the kufr sayings. Remember, the reason why we're talking about these matters is because, firstly, we are obligated to learn the correct belief, and also we are obligated to remain steadfast upon this belief and to protect ourselves from everything that may affect this belief or may affect our iman. We are obligated to stay away from it. And the only way we can do that is by learning about it. The one who does not know evil is more likely to fall into it, because they do not know what is dangerous. As opposed to someone who knows what is dangerous, then they know what to look out for. So one of the kufr sayings is to say to a person whom one knows to be a Muslim, to say to them, "Oh, you kafir," or to say to a Muslim, intending that you are not a Muslim. If a person says to another person, "You Jew," they say to a Muslim, "You Jew," or "You Christian," or "You with no religion," or "You atheist," or "You any other type of kafir." Here, if someone says this, and what they mean is that you are not a Muslim, whether you're a Christian or a Jew, they mean that you are not a Muslim, then this person becomes a kafir. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Man qala li akhihi ya kafir, in kana kama qala wa illa raja'at alayh." If a person says to another Muslim, "Oh, you kafir," then either it is as he said, either that person is actually a kafir and that's why this person has called them a kafir, rightfully. And if it's not the case, if it's the case that this person knows that this person is a Muslim and they call them a kafir, then that accusation, it comes back like an arrow. It comes back onto that person. That person becomes a non-Muslim. Why? Because a person who knows that another person is a Muslim and that he's upon al-Islam, if he calls him a kafir, then he is saying to him, "I know that you're a Muslim, I know you're upon truth, but I'm going to call the truth that you are upon falsehood. I'm going to call the Islam that you are upon misguidance. I'm going to call the correct belief that you are upon, that I know you're upon, I'm going to call it blasphemy. And therefore this belies the religion of al-Islam, and then such a person becomes a kafir." And there are some exceptions to that rule as well. But if somebody says to another Muslim, "Oh, you kafir," whilst knowing that they are a Muslim, and what they understand from this statement is that you are a non-Muslim, then this person commits kufr. However, some people may sometimes say this statement. They might say to a person, "Oh, you're such a kafir," they might say. Or they might say, "You're such a Jew," for example. And what they mean by that is, and this is still not allowed, what they might mean by that is that your manners are not the manners of a Muslim, the way a Muslim should be. The way that a Muslim should be is he would try to do as the Messenger of Allah did, behave the way that the Prophet did, alayhi salatu wasalam. Implement the manners of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. This is how a Muslim should be. But if somebody is not showing those good manners, they lie, they cheat, they betray, they backbite, they do all these things that a person wouldn't associate with, or a person would not attribute that to a good Muslim. So someone might say to another person, "You're such a kafir." Meaning what? You're behaving like a non-Muslim behaves. Muslims don't behave like that. Muslims don't lie and cheat and betray and. Good Muslims are not supposed to do that. Or good Muslims don't do that. In this case, because one is likening this Muslim to a kafir in this Muslim's behavior, this Muslim is likening this Muslim's behavior to the behavior of a kafir. Hence, that's why he said to him, "Such a kafir," or "Oh, you kafir." This person who said that doesn't fall out of Islam, but instead they commit an enormous sin. Likewise, if someone said to a person who they knew to be a Muslim, if they said to them, "Oh, you Jew," and what they meant by that was that you are extremely stingy. You're not generous at all. You don't pay for anything. So they said to him, "You're such a Jew." He doesn't actually mean by that you are actually a kafir. Rather, because if he did, then this would be kufr on this person. What this person understands, what this person means, is that you are a person who is stingy just like those people are stingy. So he is likening this Muslim in his behavior to what he believes is a behavior of a Jewish person, let's say. So in this case, this person is not judged as a kafir, the one who said, "Oh, you're such a Jew." He doesn't commit kufr, but he commits an enormous sin. This is still an enormous sin. And people do that a lot nowadays. People do that a lot nowadays. So one should be warned against it. I heard one of my friends once told me that when he was younger, his parents, when he used to misbehave, they used to say to him, "Oh, you kafir." I was astonished. I'd never heard that example before. I'd never heard that example before from people from the Indian subcontinent. So, if somebody was to say, so if I just read what I just mentioned now, if someone said to another Muslim, "Oh, you kafir," whilst not having an apparent justification, that is to say this without intending by one's expression to be likening him to a kafir, i.e., not meaning you are like the kafir in the evil deed that you committed. Rather, instead, if one means that your religion, which I know to be Islam, is actually kufr, then him saying to that person, "Oh, kafir," makes him a kafir himself. Among the kufr sayings is to mock one of the names of Allah. So someone knew that this is the name of Allah and they mocked it, they belittled it. They commit kufr by that. Also, if a person belittles the promise of Allah, Allah promised the people who do good deeds and who believe paradise. He promised them paradise. So if somebody intends, or if somebody belittles paradise by saying paradise is nothing, when they're being encouraged to do good deeds to enter paradise, to gain the lofty ranks, to gain the luxury and the pleasure, they say, paradise is nothing. Belittling paradise. This is belittling the promise of Allah. So this is kufr. Like some people had said in the past, belittling it, they said paradise is like the rattle of the baby, a toy. Paradise is like a toy. It's like for babies. That's what this person said. This is kufr. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ تَعَالَى. Or if somebody said the pleasures of this world, if they were being encouraged to leave sins and think about the pleasures in the hereafter and so on. And this person said the pleasures of this world, or some of the pleasures of this world, are better than paradise. Like to say, I don't need paradise. Then this person becomes a kafir. You see how many hundreds and thousands, perhaps millions of statements there could be that all entail belittling, that people could say or perhaps do say that are kufr. For this reason the Prophet ﷺ said the most sins a person commits is with the tongue. And in our previous session we also mentioned that a person may utter a statement because of which they land 70 years into hell. They utter a statement which is kufr, which makes them a non-Muslim. And in a narration, مَا يَتَبَيَّنُ فِيهَا, even if a person doesn't know that this is going to land them in hell, it still will land them in hell. Likewise, if somebody belittles the threat of Allah, mocking the threat of Allah, which is the threat of Allah to the sinners and the disbelievers, the threat of Allah being the threat of torture, whether in the grave, on the day of judgment, or in hellfire. To belittle this threat is kufr. Like for someone to say, if it's a cold day and someone is committing a sin, and then someone says to them, this is not the path to paradise. This is you committing a sin. This is a way to get into hell. And they say, well, at least we'll be warm in hell, in a belittling way, as to say hell. So to say, at least on a cold day, to say at least we'll be warm in hell. They commit kufr by that because they're belittling what? The threat of Allah. Allah threatened the people who disobey Him with hellfire. So to mock hellfire, to belittle it in this way is kufr. However, if a person says about hell, hell is a bad place, then this is true. There's no harm in that. Allah revealed وَبِئْسَ الْمَصِيرُ. What a bad place it is to end up in. وَبِئْسَ الْمَصِيرُ. So if somebody says, hell is a really bad place, this is true. This is true. This is not the same as belittling hellfire. Like to say, hell is nothing. Or in the hereafter, at least I'll be warm in hellfire. Belittling hellfire. Or for someone to say, I'm going to experience pleasure in hell. The torment of hell is going to be pleasurable for me. I'm going to love it in hell. This is belittling the threat of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. This is all in the case when a person, this pertains to when a person knows, for example, that such and such is a name of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala and he mocks it. When a person knows the promise of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala and knowingly he knows that this type of enjoyment is mentioned in paradise, and then while remembering that belittles it, then this is kufr. However, if he mocks a promise among the things that Allah created as pleasure for the people of paradise, while unaware that this is mentioned in the religious texts, or he belies a threat of Allah, torture in the grave, a type of punishment in the grave, a type of punishment in hell, if a person mocks that, and he's unaware that this is mentioned in the Islamic texts, then he does not fall into kufr. His ignorance here saves him from kufr. A beneficial note. One of the scholars in the past, Ibn Juzay, he mentioned a fascinating saying where he collected many examples of kufr. He said, there is no difference in opinion in deeming as a kafir the one who, and then he gives many examples. So he's saying all of the Muslim scholars, they agreed that the following people, if they believe such and such, say such and such, or do such and such, they become non-Muslims. Who are they? Let's go through them. He said, there is no difference of opinion in deeming as a kafir the one who denies the godhood or the oneness of Allah. Someone who says Allah is not God. Or someone who says there is another God other than Allah. Here they're denying the uniqueness of Allah. They're denying the oneness of Allah. Or if somebody says, or if somebody denies, there is no difference in opinion in deeming as a kafir the one who denies the godhood or the oneness of Allah, or the one who worships other than Allah with Allah, meaning that a person doesn't worship Allah, instead they worship other than Allah. Allah revealed, Inna ad-deena 'inda Allahi al-Islam. So anybody who worships other than Allah is considered to be a kafir. In the past, people, they would teach their children from a very young age, Al-mu'minu fil jannah wal-kafiru fil nar. As simple as that. The Muslim will be in paradise and the kafir will be in hellfire. So they wouldn't, it's very clear, Allah revealed that the one that takes a path other than al-Islam, لَن يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ, it will not be accepted from him. Or the one who follows the religion of the Jews, the Christians, the Magus, or the Sabians, or the one who believes that Allah dwells inside the creation. Someone who believes that Allah is in the creation. Remember, Allah is without a place. Someone who believes that Allah is in the creation, like in the sky, or above the sky, on the arsh, or everywhere, or that Allah is in space, or on a planet, or on the moon, or in the creation, then this person is a kafir. This person is a kafir. Or who believes in at-tanasukh, they believe in reincarnation. Now, to explain that, if a person dies, then their soul goes when the body is buried, the soul goes to the grave so that the angels ask the questions. Then after that, the soul, it doesn't roam freely on the earth. Okay? So there's no way that the soul would come back into another body, okay, and live again, vacating another body. That's not true. That belies the religion of Islam. Okay? Because the souls aren't able to get away from the angels. Okay? So whoever believes in that would also be a non-Muslim, because it goes against the religious texts. Or who believes that Allah is not alive. Remember when we did the 13 attributes of Allah? We had mentioned that Allah, as well as existing, right? As well as existence being one of His attributes, on top of that, one of His attributes is being alive, i.e. not dead. So whoever believes that Allah is not alive is a kafir. Or this person believes that Allah is not knowledgeable, i.e. ignorant. Or he denies one of the attributes of Allah, i.e. the 13 that we mentioned. Or the one that says that other than Allah created the world. Like to say that Allah didn't create the universe, or that the universe came into existence by itself, or that the devil created the universe, and so on. Then all of this is kufr. Or the one that says Allah is begotten from something, meaning that Allah came from something. Or the one that claims that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is something that sits, as some people do. The Jews and the Christians, they believe that Allah is an entity in the sky or above the sky that sits on a throne. This is kufr. Or also is a kafir the one who says that the world does not have a beginning, to say that it's been existing infinitely without a beginning. Or the one that doubts in any of the aforementioned. Or who deems someone to be a prophet after our Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam. Because he said, La nabiyya ba'di, there is no prophet after me. Or who deems it possible for the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam to lie. And we've been through that. Remember the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam? When some people accused him of lying and hence committed kufr by accusing Ibrahim of lying alayhi salam. Or whoever claims that the message of Islam is specific to the Arabs, i.e. he claims that Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam was sent to the Arabs only. All of this is kufr. Or the one that claims that he himself receives revelation. Because what is he saying then? He's saying, I am a prophet. Or the one that claims that he has entered paradise in this world, before the hereafter. Or the one that deems that all of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam were non-Muslims. Some people, they claim that most of the companions of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, they claim that they were kafirs. If that had been the case, how would we be able to trust anything that came from their Rabb? Likewise is a kafir the one who rejects what was known by necessity to be a part of the religion. We mentioned issues like that. If somebody knows that something is halal, something is permissible in Islam, and they deliberately, whilst remembering that, they say it is haram, then this person becomes a kafir for belying the religion. Or the one who goes to the churches in the clothing specific to the Christians. The scholars mention this case, the person who wears the clothes of the Christians, they wear the robe, they wear the belt, and they enter the church mixed in with all of the Christians when they enter the church. This is something that only a Christian does. So this person would become a non-Muslim by that. Or the one who claims that worship is no longer an obligation for some of the pious people. This person becomes a kafir. Or the one that rejects even a letter or more of the Quran. In the past, in the not so distant past, there was a leader who openly would say that there are certain words that we have in the Quran today. He would say that this word in the Quran is not needed anymore. So he wouldn't recite it as part of the Quran. Yani he denied as being part of the Quran something that all of the Muslim scholars for over 1,000 years deemed to be part of the Quran. So this person committed kufr for that, for saying that. Or the one who adds a letter or more to the Quran, i.e. whoever does this out of stubbornness while believing that it is not part of the Quran. Or the one who changes the Quran, i.e. out of stubbornness. Or the one who says the Quran is not a miracle. Or the one who says reward and punishment are not real. Or the one that says that the scholars, the imams are of a higher rank than the prophets. In all of these situations, a person becomes a kafir. Included in that were sayings that are kufr, actions that are kufr, and beliefs that are kufr. So, rather than, the key is this, rather than a person memorizing all of these examples, a person should memorize the rules that we've mentioned previously. like this, like saying about something halal that is haram, purposefully saying that, or saying about something that is haram that is halal, whilst knowing that it's not like that. This is kufr. This is called belying the religion. Any form, any type of belying that Islam, actively, knowingly belying an Islam, is kufr. All the different types of mocking, if a person is belittling something in Islam, this comes under belying the religion, because there is a certain glorification that comes with being a believer that should be in a person's heart. By mocking something that has a high status in Islam, a person is belying the religion. Okay? So these kufr actions and sayings and beliefs, they all come under certain categories. So a person doesn't have to memorize millions of examples. No, they apply the rule. They learn the rule and they apply it. There is no difference with regards to the judgment of apostasy upon the person who uttered any of the aforementioned statements, whether he said them in a state of acceptance or in a state of anger. This is because in both aforementioned states, it is an obligation to revere Allah Azza wa Jal, His messengers, His angels. Even if one's angry, one is not allowed to swear at the prophets alayhimus salam. Likewise, in all states, one of anger and one when one is not angry, one is not allowed to insult the angels or the religious rules. Like if somebody hears about a religious rule, like they're told that you can't take that money because the Prophet didn't allow it, alayhi salatu wasalam. This is haram money, you can't take that. Even if a person says, oh, but I've worked for so many hours and so on, but they're told that no, this is haram. Then here, a person, if they know that this is what Al-Islam says, this is what the Prophet taught, alayhi salatu wasalam, they can't belittle the rule. They can't say, oh, well, this rule is rubbish. This is kufr. Someone says about an Islamic rule that, oh, this is rubbish. Or if they say, this is unjust, this is unfair, when they know this is what the Prophet ﷺ conveyed, then this person commits kufr. It's very, very light on the tongue. It's very easy for a person to say such a statement, but it lands a person into kufr. And likewise, the judgment does not differ whether a person said the kufr statement while intending to leave Islam or not. So whether a person intended that by saying this statement, now I'm going to leave Islam. This is my intention. This is why I'm saying it. You know, a person might fall out of an Islam even if they didn't intend to leave an Islam. That's what many people might say. When you say to them, look, you said that statement just then, right? This is kufr. They might say, oh, but I had no intention of leaving Islam. It's not like I wanted to leave Islam. So, as though to say, well, how am I to blame? How can I have become a kafir when I didn't even intend to be a kafir? I want to be a Muslim. Yeah, but you're not allowed to say that statement. Whether you wanted to become a kafir or not, you become a kafir. As long as one knows the meaning of what they said, even if they are ignorant of what it results in, he would still be judged as a kafir. No one ever made it a condition for someone to be judged as a kafir that they would have to know about themselves that they have become a kafir, or that they have to intend to be a kafir. As the first part of the lesson goes, we'll finish over there, inshaAllah. Let's start with the second part where we speak about certain sins of the body parts. So, we got to Tarweejul Zaif. Among the sins of the body is to aid the distribution or to spread what is counterfeit. So this is among the major sins. An example, if a person has a £10 note, or they have some money, they have £2, a £2 coin, okay? They have what they think is a £2 coin. And in actual fact, it's not real, okay? Somehow, they realize that it's not real. They are not allowed to go now and buy something with that whilst claiming that it is a £2 coin, because it's not £2. Okay, that's just an example. It's not permissible for a person to continue using that whilst knowing that it does not have that value. Okay, and this goes for other things as well. This is actually called, this is a type of cheating people. And this is an enormous sin. Now this is the case even if it's haram, even if the one that one is dealing with is a kafir. It's not like, oh well, they're a kafir, so I can give it to them. No, it's not permissible. It's not permissible to deal with a Muslim in this way, and it's not permissible to deal with a kafir in this way either. Sometimes people get coins, whether it's copper or other types of metal, and they paint over them. If one knows about this, then they're not allowed to use that. It's unfortunate sometimes someone might get a coin, or they might get a note of some kind that they were given. Somebody came and purchased something from them and they gave them this. Whether they intended this fake note or not, it's now in one's possession. Yeah, one feels bad. SubhanAllah, somebody gave it to me. Ah, how dare they? Perhaps they knew, perhaps they didn't know. Somebody gave it to me. So many people will feel like they have lost out unless they also pass it on. Unless they go to buy something, so they put this note in the middle of the other notes and they pass it on. They say, well, somebody gave it to me, I'm just passing it on. Now this is an enormous sin. This is an enormous sin. Likewise, if let's say there was a famous watch, a certain type of watch that had a certain name, it had certain features, certain functions, special functions, okay? And a person got their hands on a watch that is like it. It looks like it. It looks like it has those same functions and so on. It's got the same name on it and so on and so on and so on. But a person knows from themselves, they know that this is not the real thing. This is not the real thing. It's not the same quality. It doesn't carry those same features and so on and those functions. And a person then sells it claiming that it's the real thing. Like to say, this is such and such famous watch. I'm selling it at a discount for such and such price. This is haram for a person to do that. This is considered cheating. This is considered a betrayal. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Man ghashana falaysa minna." The one who cheats the people is not a perfect Muslim. So, but this is different to buying something that quote unquote is fake, where the person buying it knows that it's not the real thing. That's fine, because the person knows what they're buying. It's a good copy of something, where a person knows that, yeah, okay, I know it's not, if you want to call it the real thing, it's not that which is being advertised elsewhere and it's really expensive. It looks like it. It's got a similar name. Yeah, if this is made clear to the person and they buy it, that's fine. That's not haram. That's not haram. If I give an example, if a person, he has a shirt person has a shirt, or they have a jumper, and they just happen to be, they happen to be painting. They're painting a wall, okay? As they're painting, some of the paint, it fell onto their shirt. And mashallah, it fell onto the shirt, and it made like a tick. Like that. Imagine that happened. Okay. Is it permissible for him to sell that? Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. Do you know this sign, when there's a circle and there's a C inside it, right? You know that, don't you? Where does it say that in the Quran? It doesn't. Where does it say that in the hadiths of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? It doesn't. If imagine Al-Imam al-Bukhari, imagine, his book Sahih al-Bukhari, imagine al-Bukhari had said, and he would never say this because he knew the rules of the religion. Imagine al-Bukhari said, no one is allowed to copy my book. No one. I do not, if you want to copy my book, knock on my door and ask me. Imagine al-Bukhari had said, no one is allowed to copy my book. Imagine all the scholars had said, no one is allowed to copy my book. Nobody said that among them. Why? Because they knew it's not haram. Okay? So when we speak, even to each other, when we might find people who have now a certain expectancy because they've been raised in a certain way, they've only seen things one way. And they might even support this. Like, how dare somebody do this and this when, it's that person's work or it's that person's, whatever. We look at the rules of the religion. Like the example that I gave you. When, haphazardly, this paint fell and it made it. Imagine the paint fell, they were painting again. MashaAllah, they're painting a different room this time. And this time there were, 3 or 4 lines this way. 1, 2, 3. I don't know if it's 3 or 4, I forgot. Like that. And then they thought, that looks pretty nice. MashaAllah. And then it spelled out A, D, it spelled it out, it spelled something out as well. And they decided to sell it. Is that haram? No. Someone wants to buy it, and they know that this is not this other brand, right, that is usually sold. They know that this is, it's just someone's made it. But this is not haram. So we also know now we're not allowed to say, oh yeah, that's fake. It's haram to sell that. How would one of us say about something that is not haram that is haram? How would someone do that? Yeah, if someone says, oh, it's fake, considering that, they have in their mind that thing over there, that's the original. But this is not that thing, so, in this respect, it's fake. Fine. But to say that it's haram for you to sell it, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. For a person to say, did you? Yeah. Does it mention the patent office in the Quran? No. Is it mentioned in the hadiths of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam? No. So to spread things that are counterfeit and to continue to use them whilst knowing that they are counterfeit, and to pass things off as being one way. Because look, something that is very expensive, take an example of a jumper. Something is very expensive. It might be expensive, yes, because it has some writing on it, but it might be also expensive because it's better material, it's thicker. Okay? So for someone now to pass it off, for someone to sell something that is of a lesser quality, and to say it's actually that better quality, this is a lie. That's why that's not permissible. Anyway. So next, among the sins of the body is to use golden and silver utensils. So knives, forks, plates that are gold, that are actually made of real gold, okay? Not just have been sprayed the color gold, an actual silver, not just that they've been sprayed silver or painted silver, no, using actual gold, golden plates made of gold and silver plates, to use them to eat in, to use a golden fork, to use a golden spoon, a golden knife. This is haram. This is among the sins of the body. It's an enormous sin. Likewise, one is not allowed to have, even on display, plates that are made of gold, trays that are made of gold or silver, even if one isn't using them, because the scholars said it leads to using them. And they said the reason why it's haram is that it breaks the hearts of the poor people. Imagine someone poor came to that person's house and they barely find food for themselves and for their children. And these people are eating in plates made of gold. It breaks their heart. It breaks their heart. The Prophet ﷺ said, إن الذي يأكل ويشرب في آنية الذهب والفضة إنما يجرجر في بطنه نار جهنم. He mentioned that whoever uses gold or silver utensils, this person will have fire in their stomach on the Day of Judgment. This was narrated by Al-Imam Muslim. Some people have other things made of gold as well that they use, other than knives and forks and so on. The Prophet ﷺ, his family members, they were special in that his wives, the Prophet ﷺ did not prefer for them to have gold. Not because it's haram, but it's because for some people having it can change them. For some people who are drowning in the dunya. It's an expression of love for money. That doesn't mean, of course, like I said, that one cannot have gold, one cannot have silver, and so on. Next, among the sins of the body is to contaminate the masjid. To contaminate the masjid with something that is najis or not. Najis meaning something that's filthy, like urine. Urine inside the masjid. Or blood, contaminating the masjid with blood. Blood and urine are najis. But also, for a person to contaminate the masjid with something that is pure. Saliva, for example, is pure. While saliva is in your mouth, you're not disgusted by it. It is pure, right? But despite that, one is not allowed to contaminate the masjid with something pure such as saliva. So one is not allowed to spit in the masjid, like where it's carpeted. One is not allowed to spit in the masjid. Likewise, one is not allowed to urinate or defecate in the masjid. When we say masjid, this is a specific area that was purchased, and then the one who owned this land restricted its use to be a masjid. As for nowadays, when you see that the toilets, okay, they're connected to the masjid, some people might even think that they are inside the masjid. They're not actually on the land that was restricted, was specified to be a masjid. That they're always on the side. Even though it might be one building, right? Seems like, oh, this is the masjid. In the norm, a person would say, this is the masjid. But in actual fact, the toilets are built to the side, or they're built beyond the land that was specifically specified, restricted to be a masjid. La ilaha illallah. For a person, the next sin of the body is for a person to delay an obligation. To delay an obligation beyond its time. So there are certain obligations that have a certain time. A good example is the obligatory prayer. The obligatory prayer is supposed to be prayed between one time and another. Its time enters and then the time exits. If a person is not excused and they do not pray, then they are considered to have delayed this obligation beyond its time. This is sinful. In the case of the prayer, this is an enormous sin. And like that, there are other examples. There are other examples of obligations that a person, if they delay them, then they would be sinful. Like delaying one's zakah. One's zakah is due now. A person is not allowed to delay it. If a person didn't fast in Ramadan when they were able, or they fasted but then they invalidated their fast when they were not allowed to, then immediately after Al-Eid they need to make that up, and they're not allowed to delay. If they delay, they are sinful. So one is not allowed to delay an obligatory matter, i.e. taking it outside of its time. And the last sin of the body that we'll talk about today is to give money for a sin. So giving money for something sinful, engaging in a sinful transaction, this is an enormous sin. Like, for example, somebody who sells an item that doesn't have a monetary value. Things that are najis, like blood, so things that are impure, like blood, urine, alcohol, meat that was not slaughtered properly, that you know was not slaughtered properly Islamically, or meat that is always haram, like pork. These things don't have a monetary value, meaning, Islamically, even if you had a lot of this, you had a lot of wine or a lot of urine, it has no value. It's not even worth a penny, Islamically. So these things, if a person sells them, even if they were appointed to sell, if they took money for them, right, then this would be an enormous sin. So an example of that is someone who works in a supermarket and they work on the till. So although they have been appointed to be there and they don't actually own those items, they've been appointed to carry out those transactions. whether it is a Muslim who sits at the till or a non-Muslim, for them to carry out these transactions according to the rules of Islam, for them to carry out these transactions by taking money for things that do not have a monetary value, like I explained, they commit a major sin. Every time that they do that, they commit an enormous sin. This is something that's very, very dangerous. It's not an excuse for a person to say, but we live in a non-Muslim country. This is not an excuse. This is not what the scholars didn't say, if you live in a non-Muslim country, then everything that's haram becomes halal. And the scholars didn't say, well, you can sell these things, as long as you don't eat them and drink them, you can sell them. They didn't say that. They didn't say that. And this is not a situation of desperation, because no one's forcing a person to stay in a non-Muslim country. A person enjoys many luxuries here in this country, for example. So no one. So when people sometimes use this excuse, which is not really an excuse, it's not based on anything Islamic. It's just emotion. To say, well, but we live here. Yeah, we live here. But the Prophet ﷺ didn't say that if you live in a non-Muslim country, then everything that is haram becomes halal. He didn't say that. And a person is not allowed to engage in things that are to provide things, as you mentioned last time, to provide things and aid people to do haram, and then say, well, I'm not the one doing it, but you're providing it. And Allah revealed, وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. So, to pay for something that is sinful, this is an enormous sin. I'll give you another example. There are some countries that are on the coast, right? So there are beaches, or they're on the banks of rivers. And now what they might do is, if you want to go, or for example it's a desert, and the shore, okay, the coastline, this is owned by Allah. Of course, everything is owned by Allah. And this cannot be owned by specific people. It's just one of those things. It's for the public. Okay? So, the forest, the jungle, okay? The public can roam there however they want. On the beaches, people can access that. Okay? No one is allowed to restrict the access onto those areas. The banks of the rivers, no one is allowed to restrict the access to those places. Nowadays, what do some people do? They build resorts, or they build hotels on the bank of the river, or close to the shore, on the beach. Or they would restrict a part of the beach, or the desert, okay? They would restrict it, and they would say, you have to give some money to enter. First of all, for them to do that, to restrict a person from entering, this is sinful. لأن الأرض أرض الله. This land belongs to Allah تبارك وتعالى. And Allah made it permissible for the public, for the general public, to use this area. So a person doesn't have a right to prevent others from entering. Now also, when they take money for that, this is an enormous sin. Because not only are they preventing somebody from entering, now they're saying, give me money so you can enter. That's sinful. Also, for a person to enter those lands, okay, while paying money, because this encourages them to continue. Even though a person, let's say they dislike for them to do that because it's sinful, but for one to pay money to access this supposedly restricted area, it is indirectly a support of these people. So this is sinful. So one needs to be careful when they travel, for example, not to pay for this type of thing because it's not permissible. Paying for something that is not permissible makes it into a major sin. Wherever money is involved in a sin, then that sin becomes a major sin. It's transformed. It might have been a small sin, now it becomes a major sin because one used money. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ أُنَاسًا يَتَخَوَّضُونَ فِي مَالِ اللَّهِ بِغَيْرِ حَقٍّ فَلَهُمُ النَّارُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Indeed, some people meddle in what Allah owns. Wealth, money, all of this is owned by Allah. The beaches, the seas, the rivers, the jungles, the forests, the deserts, all of this is owned by Allah. Some people meddle unrightfully, unjustly in what Allah owns. فَلَهُمُ النَّارُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. They will be exposed to fire in the hereafter. This judgment of paying for a sin being an enormous sin is taken from this hadith. This hadith narrated by Al-Bukhari. Likewise, to pay a person to pay money to a person who, let's say, singing like that. You see nowadays some people go to concerts and so on and so on and so on. This is not permissible to pay for that. For that to act as a wage for them. This is not permissible. So all of these rules that we're going through, they're taken from hadiths. Okay, even though we're not going through all of the hadiths, because that would take a long time to mention the narrators and the hadiths and how it's derived and so on, but we're just giving a summary, and then I'm just pointing out some of the matters that come to my mind at that time about these things from what I've heard from my teachers. Okay, so there is a lot to review, there is a lot to learn, there is a lot, mashallah, that we should all aspire to know. The more you know of religious knowledge, the better. The more you know, the more this shapes the way you look at things. It shapes your perspective, makes you grow as a person, brings you closer to, insha'Allah, obey Allah even more, and to stay away from sin. Okay, we'll stop here, insha'Allah. Let's say La ilaha illallah and as-salah ala nabi. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. بارك الله.